Hey, yo, Reset.
What's up, Power?
You know, I just realized something.
Yeah?
Persona protagonists have something in common with Batman. You know what that is?
What's that?
No parents. No parents around. No parents that love them.
So maybe that's why they get up with what they do.
That's what gives them that edge, you know?
That's why they're out at creepy bars talking to like the old monk with who's drinking the whole time.
Over, you know, their
doctors
and teachers and whoever the hell. Oh, yeah. It gives them that little, that razor edge that, or that emo-ness that they all have.
We're learning something about Japan here, aren't we?
We are. We are. Oh, man.
All right, y'all. Well, welcome to another amazing episode of Power and Reset.
Power Reset!
Power Reset! Thank you all for joining us today. I'm happy to be here. Power, how you doing today?
Man, I'm feeling excited to talk one of our favorite franchises. You know,
close to my heart.
Man, we're going to go through it, ain't we?
We're diving in. We've finally taken the plunge.
All
One of our favorite series that you introduced me to, actually. The Persona series.
Yes.
Which itself is really a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei brand and series. It was originally Shin Megami Tensei Persona.
Right.
But it's kind of evolved into its own thing now.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to take that Persona plunge. But before we do, before I start plunging, I do want to just say, you know, that whole franchise is incredible. You know, we're going to talk Persona today, but the Nocturne series, Devil Summoner, Devil Survivor, this is a franchise that is like a Marvel franchise at this point for me. All the characters and monsters are in every single game. Sometimes they're heroes, sometimes they're villains. It's such a sweet franchise.
Amazing. And you've touched on it. I know in one of our episodes we talked a little bit about it. A little bit of Shin Megami Tensei.
We've plunged and poked at Persona before.
Definitely come up a time or two.
Yes. But man, I'm excited. I think there's only one way to start this out because, you know, I've dabbled in Persona 1 and 2, but I've never really dove or plunged into them. Plunge being the fun word today. But we got to start with 3, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're going to focus on 3 and onward. Because let's be honest, 3, if you haven't played any of the Persona games, 3, it was a pivotal moment. I mean, it took the series 3D in a sense. Yeah. And it also introduced some like new styles, new mechanics, really kind of evolved the series. And it would lay the foundation for the entire series going forward. Oh, yeah.
Very risky, too, at the time. You know, the Persona summoning mechanics were very questionable. You know, for folks who haven't played it, when you summon your Persona, you shoot yourself in the head or somewhere in your body, which was like, I mean, that was a hard sell.
You have a good story about that. Speaking of.
I do, and I believe I may have told it in a previous episode. So if you're interested, you know, make sure you listen through. I think it was the game mechanics episode. But
write to us at powerandresetpodcast@gmail.com if you can find where Power mentions the story of his Persona 3 experience. And if you do, I don't know, we'll give you a prize.
We'll give you a shout out on an episode for sure. Absolutely. You'll get a power plunge shout out. I'll be plunging at you.
It's the new. It's not the polar plunge. It's the power plunge.
Yeah, it's the power plunge,
which is better than the reset. Redo? Well, I'll have to work on that.
Man, but so even though that was really risque at the time, all the Personas were pretty damn dark. Honestly, even 2, I think it was called Persona 2 Original Sin was like the other version. There was like 2 versions of it in Persona 1. All the endings ended up really turning out real dark. And there's something that you and I always talk about, Reset, that I found really fascinating about 2. And again, I know we want to dive into 3. But we always talk about how we want the series to evolve to the point where you're playing as an adult. You know, you're able to go to bars and clubs. Persona 2, you're playing as a grown woman who's a reporter. And that was like I think that's still probably one of the most popular Persona games. It's similar to like Final Fantasy VI. You know, everybody loves Final Fantasy VI, even though 7's like the most famous.
It's got a great style. It's pretty technical. Like, it's hard to jump into, especially if you're not like an experienced RPG.
Exactly.
You know,
proficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dated. But anyway, back to Persona 3. I mean, we got to just go into it. let's talk the cast.
So, hold on. But before we do that, I just want to say this is an interesting game that what's cool about it is it's kind of like this weird version of like Pokemon in a sense.
Yeah.
Like there's this weird like it all revolves around these like personas, and you kind of gotta catch them all. Like there's this whole thing where it's like your combat, like the way you fight and all this stuff, all revolves around these things that you like, these personas you acquire, and they become the tool that you fight with. And so it's got this really cool, like it's not your average like, oh, okay, you know, each person has a weapon and everyone does this. It's got this extra layer to it.
And on top of that, it's similar to Pokemon in the sense of the rock, paper, scissors portion of the mechanics. Like, you know, thunder beats this, fire beats that, you know. One thing I always thought that was really funny and fascinating with 3, 4, and 5 is that, like, the main character is typically the only one, you know, maybe there's some other side characters who can do some stuff that I'm not going to mention, but he's usually the only one, or she's usually the only one who can summon multiple personas. Like in 3, I forget exactly why. Was it the Fool card? They were the Fool Arcana, and that's what allowed.
So there's a big it's like a Arcana theme. What is that called? Not horoscope checking, like tarot cards.
Tarot cards.
Like the full like the tarot deck. Yes. It's like a big central theme in Persona, and basically, kind of everyone you encounter is basically modeled to or like linked to a specific tarot card.
Yeah.
Or, you know, they have a different word for them, but so
the magician
and the fool is always the main character, and they always have that special power. Everyone else gets a persona, and they get to kind of fight with this.
Right.
But you know, it's like fighting a trainer program. Like they have that one, but you know, you get to mix and match and do whatever you want.
It's fascinating because it always led me to two questions. Number one, I always felt like it's like, so does that mean that your like actual story based persona is special? Is it not special? Like typically by the end of those games, you're like in 3, I think it was Orpheus or something like that, or Orpheus. I can't remember exactly what the name was, but like that persona changes to like Messiah if you do enough. And you know, Izanagi becomes like Izanagi no Kami or something like that. And you know, they always get these nice, awesome super forms. But you lose them like midway through the game because they become kind of worthless. And so you have to come back to them. And the other thing is, you know, some of the people you interact with in those games are tarot cards, and those are like your social link, you know, folks. Can they like? Does that mean though that they would be able to summon a persona if like trained properly? You know, I guess it's based on the stories, huh? Because like sometimes like in 4 you have to be pulled in the TV, but
with how you get the power. And then there's something that they've never fully explained that I don't want to dig into yet because I feel like we really got to get into that.
Yeah, we'll get there.
I think you know where I'm going, but kind of like you said, like I feel like let's kind of let's go into 3 and let's talk like cast. Let's talk the story because that's what we're getting. Like the story of these games is what sets the tone.
Absolutely.
So with all the persona, or at least with 3 and onward, kind of you always got the silent protagonist.
Yes.
And they're different in every game, but it's always, you know, you embody the protagonist and you kind of get to choose, you know, what to say, like how to play them, what you're gonna do.
Yeah. I remember the protagonist in 3. You know, they gave them a name later on in the anime and in the manga, and usually nothing lines up because they're always a little bit different from each other, which is fine, keeps things ambiguous. But the thing that I remember about 3's protagonist was when I first started, I thought to myself, who the hell wants to play as this loser? Like he was I'm talking about OG Vanilla 3. He was so lame looking. He was real like nerd. Like he just had his hands in his pocket all the time.
Like, kind of like shy.
Yeah,
like
just
that,
shy.
Like almost like hunched. Had like the earphones on and just listen to music.
Just like ugh. Like I didn't feel that way about 4 or 5. Just 3, I was like, ugh, this is my guy. And then as you play, like, and also it was perfect because this like revitalized the franchise. But as you play, you begin to increase your stats, your charisma, and your courage, and this and that. And it gives you options to do things that you couldn't do at the beginning of the game and say things you couldn't say. And also at that time, you know, you're getting better personas and the story's progressing, so you're doing more badass shit. And so like my perception of the character went from like this guy being some scrumpy looking loser to like
to just this
god,
low
like a
key
goat.
badass.
Yeah, to this low key goat. So like when I see him, like if I show this character to others, they're like, ugh, like this is who you play as? I'm like, you have no idea. This dude is like borderline Jesus for this franchise. Like, literally, like,
yeah, and that,
you know,
the main character of 3 is a character that reoccurs and has an interesting story that's kind of cascaded outside of just that game, which hasn't happened yet for the other ones. There's something a little special there.
And actually, we should also talk about this. There is a big Persona, I think, 20th anniversary coming up soon. Have you heard about this?
Yep.
So I think there's an event. We'll have to do a little digging, maybe even return for maybe a special. But there's an event coming up. They're gonna have a huge announcement. So it could be Persona 6. That would be something else.
I would be so happy if it was Persona 6. I know they've teased like a mobile game.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping the big announcement isn't just the mobile game, because like that's already happened to another series I love, Fire Emblem
and Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
it's all mobile. Pokemon, Mario, everything's going mobile.
Yep.
And look, let's not get derailed, you know. But yeah, I hear you. We want something a little bigger.
Right.
I would love a little.
See the new one.
And I know that the director of I think the past few games, is it the same director? Do you know? I think it is. Nevertheless,
I think it still is. Yeah.
I know they're working on the next one, and he's come out and said that this next one is special. He said that this next one, because Persona 5 was so big and well received, that he wants 6 to be something next level. So he's changing the team up. So it's risky. You know, we could get a little cyberpunky, which again, love the game, but it's risky. But I'm excited because I know whatever's coming is going to be the Elden Ring of Persona. You know,
and that's the thing is you got to take risks and you got to evolve, because as much as I want another Persona that's just, you know, the same kind of like style, I also I know deep down in my heart I don't. I know as much as I've loved 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Even you know, playing 5, I go back and play 4, and I'm like, man, there's just so much missing that they added, and I want to see that next step in the Persona series.
Yeah, I think keep the art style of 5, the way when you went to battle, we'll get there. But you know, we'll talk about what we want in the future. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, so we're talking about cast, right? You got the protagonist, you got Yukari.
And so just to set the stage for everyone, so all the Persona games always start with this amazing cinematic intro.
Yes.
That brings the main character somewhere in Japan. They always arrive somewhere. I forget where it is actually in 3, but it typically so far it always ends up being a high school.
Right.
At some point. And so in the game, protagonist is basically going to attend this new Japanese high school. So they've got this student uniform on. There's this awesome intro with them on the train listening to music.
Right.
Some weird stuff happens.
Yeah, and in 3 specifically, I think our protagonist's parents had just passed, and some accident was the deal, right?
Yeah.
I think it was either recently or it could have been maybe a few years before they arrived, but I think it was very recent. And I want to say it was a car crash. Something happened, and they lost their parents, because the theme of Persona 3 is really death. That's like the overarching theme.
It's a very, very dark, very dark, somber.
Yeah. Life and death, I guess, so it can be beautiful. But but every time it's the protagonist showing up from somewhere else. So in this one, he's living in a dorm. He doesn't even have, you know, and Persona 4, which we'll get to, he's living with an uncle, I want to say.
Yeah, it's
you know,
parents are off doing something or something, so he ends up stuck in a small town in Inaba in Japan.
So it's always that way. They always pull you in, and you're surrounded by people who aren't close to the main character, and that way you feel isolated and you feel like that main character. Because if you had a family, it'd be like Pokemon, where it doesn't make sense. In every Pokemon game, you wake up and your mom's like, "Go on your adventure." You're like, "You're my mother. What the hell? Shouldn't I do anything else with you for the rest of the game?" You know. At least in this, it's you feel alienated, and then you really get to grow that relationship with that character.
You have to explore the people around you, the world around you, through the eyes of this protagonist.
Absolutely. And so you're right. So the protagonist shows up. You know, the first thing they do is find lodging in some which way. And then they have to go to school. They have to attend, you know, some type of university, high school, whatever.
And this is where the core cast always comes in.
Every time, yeah. There's always your first party member, who's usually some dorky guy who's like, hey, man, you new? Come and join me up, whatever. And you're like, get away from me, loser. And he's like, why? I'm going to be your best buddy. And it always comes true. And you're like, okay, I get it. You're my, my tutorial guy. You're going to get your, it's always the same there. But then usually they throw a wrench, somewhere in the barrel where, either the school bully or like the high school dropout or some random character will end up joining your party, somebody you didn't expect, or a transfer student, or a student from another school, or a graduate. Like, there's always some other folks who will join you later on, and you usually get them later in the game, I would say.
This is one of those rare games that really paces out. In a lot of games you really get the core of your party, I would say, before the 50% mark at least.
Big time.
Big time. You've pretty much gotten the vast majority. Any other characters are either guest characters, or maybe you get one late game character that's just more relevant to the story.
Right.
Not in Persona. It stretches it out. I mean, you are getting new characters throughout the game.
And it's usually, to get these characters, you usually have to do something where it's you meet said character. Said character has said issue. You help character with issue, and when you resolve that issue, they unlock Persona, and then they join your party, and that process takes 5 hours. There is quests, there's grinding to do, there's social links to max out. There's so much to do in between that quest line that it feels stretched out. You're getting a character once every 5 hours, and you're like, damn. So it feels significant in that way. And you spend a ton of time with those characters.
They really feel, they feel like proper characters.
Yeah.
Some games, your party is just kind of your party. You get them, so quickly, or once they're in your party, their story kind of doesn't keep going. Or, it's like that. Games deal with it in a lot of different ways.
They do.
But in this game, they each character is such a investment and such a part of the story that by the time they are part of your party, you feel like you really know this character, and it keeps going. It doesn't just end there.
And you're right, because whenever you get a new character and they unlock their persona, it's usually in dungeon, and that usually means that whoever the boss is has a weakness to that character. The character pops their persona out, and you're running their dungeon, and okay, I gotta have this character. They're lightning. The boss is gonna be weak to their one. And that's how it goes until you get the majority of the cast. Mm-hmm. Then once you've got them, it's anything goes. Now it's just you need to plug and play with your cast, get them synchronized, and beat these bosses with different combinations. And usually by the end, that's when you get that one wild card character who's light and dark, and it's they can do, they won't hit any weaknesses probably, but they can instant kill or
KO moves. Yeah.
And so then you really get to mix it up a little bit. So it's it's brilliant how they do it. And even though they do that in pretty much all of the games, 3, 4, and 5, it never gets old, because you're always waiting for that next character. And 4 did some interesting things with those characters. 5 too. 5
yeah,
too.
And that's the cool thing is you kind of know the format, but they do tend to mix it up. They always change a little bit about how the characters join you. I feel in 3 you're a lot closer to the cast for various story reasons.
Yeah.
4 has a very different style of kind of bringing them into your fold and into the story.
Yes.
And then 5 again, takes a very different approach. Mm-hmm. But it's still kind of along that same path of bringing them in, introducing that persona, seeing their issue, having them kind of overcome it and become part of the party.
Absolutely. Persona 3, you've got Yukari, and she was kind of she's kind of the main sweetheart for the main character. They always drop whoever you would think the canon romance would be. And again, in the anime and manga, sometimes they dabble into that and make a canon romance, quote unquote, whatever. So you've got Yukari, and she joins up with you. You've got your buddy Junpei. He's your first party member, goofy guy, kind of the Krillin of the story. Just kind of a louse. He slacks off in class, kind of an idiot, but got big heart. Mitsuru, who's like, she's just like your Urza if you've watched
she's
Fairy
the
Tail.
upperclassman, kind of leader of the.
Yeah, she's like, she's headed like her class and basically in with the leader of the dorm, whoever like owns that dorm that you stay in. She's also aware of everything that's going on, so like she like is kind of the one that brings you into that world when you have to like start learning about Tartarus and all that stuff. Akihiko, same thing, like senior class member. Was already
been
in the
doing
know.
This a while.
Yeah, badass, like tough, fights with his hand, just like your typical anime style characters. And Akihiko, anybody who really played Persona 3 knows Akihiko because Akihiko was in your party. And if Akihiko was in your party, then you know the line, Akihiko Senpai's been injured.
You heard that about 8 million times.
Yeah. And you heard that from your other party member, Fuka, which we need to touch on. Fuka is an interesting party member because you don't use her in combat. You can't actually control her.
You have these support characters.
You have a support character, and they're in every single game in some form, and they're really helpful. Those characters are always the best ones to get because once you do, you start getting random bonuses
like boosts that can like
boost
recover
healing.
your HP, your like mana, your SP in these games.
Yes. Aegis, android. I think she was an android or robot. I can't remember. And there's a difference. I want to say she was an android though. Who basically is linked to the main character for some reason.
Yep.
For some mysterious reason. Kuromaru, that character was so goofy. a dog. He doesn't talk at least, but he has a persona.
But he does.
Ken, this little boy, Ken Amada, who was also very interesting. Has a really dark intro. His quest to get him was probably one of the darkest in the franchise, I would say. And there's other characters you run into that pop into your party, but that's your main cast, of characters that you get to select. Out of all the Persona games that we're talking about, 3, 4, and 5, this was probably my second favorite cast. It's close to my first, but it's definitely my second, I would say.
I think I would have to agree. I think it's definitely just because of like the diversity, some stuff they did that they do in different ways in the other games. I think it's definitely an interesting cast. Yeah,
and there's some characters that come after this in the later franchises that felt very similar to like these guys. Like this is like you said, like our introduction to this new Persona style, this 3D Persona. And so from this point on, the protagonist is always the same, but like there's always a Junpei. Always a Junpei.
There's always this kind of goofy sidekick. There's always this sort of like
preppy,
more or less canon love interest of the character.
Yeah,
there's always the smart student who's kind of the brains of your operation.
Yeah.
They do always kind of fit these like archetypes.
Yeah.
In different ways.
Yeah.
But what's cool is like when you dive into Persona and you start to meet these characters, what starts to reveal itself is the way this game is played out.
Right.
And in Persona 3, what they did is they did this. It's sort of like a half and half. It's half this like dungeon crawling JRPG, like it's got that like great weaknesses system, but it's very much just like, grind those levels, fight these enemies, get like better gear, get the items for like, restoration and buffs, and like make your way through the dungeon.
Yeah.
And then it was half like a social like time management interaction simulator.
Yeah. And that's where you gotta really max out those stats. Max out your tarot cards, which as they level up, you get additional bonuses. Your newly summoned personas get stronger, and you gotta grind out those social links and grind out those love interests.
Yep. So you
grind them. You know what I mean?
You really gotta grind.
Because like
I see what you did there, Power.
And the thing is, hey, I just wanted to make it clear that when you grind them social links.
Only if you put the work in, though, because that's the thing is when we're talking original Persona 3,
exactly what I was about to get to. Yeah.
So it's a time management game. So basically, every day you got to go to school, and in school, there's actually like they'll even ask you questions, like real questions about like history or like mathematical concepts, and you want to get them right, because if you do, you unlock bonuses or you get little stat boosts that help level up your stats.
Yep.
And so there's a couple things you're juggling. One is your character's stats, which are like, I think it's like intelligence, charm, like courage or something. You know, there's usually, forget what the original ones were, but as you did various things, you could level them up, and they would let you like unlock new social links. And then there were the social links, which every member of your party, as you unlock them, and then some people outside of your party, you would meet them, and you'd get one of those tarot card things. It would become a social link, and if you chose to spend time with that person, that link would level up and would unlock stronger powers for that person if they were in your party, or stronger bonuses for you if they weren't.
Yeah.
But you really, like, you go to school and then you get off and you get to do one thing. I think it's like you have an afternoon and evening. So you get to do one big thing, hang out with one person, or maybe you got to get into the dungeon because you've got a time limit on when you have to do that too. And then I think it's like the evening and you can do like something small back at the dorm, like study for the, get your knowledge increased. And so it was punishing.
And it was so brutal because you would make the choice like, oh man, I gotta go spend some time with Mitsuru today, and she'd ask you some question, and you'd get like, you'd say some answer, and you'd see that one little bleep, like the 1 star or whatever, and you're like, oh fuck, because every answer can net you 3, and you need those 3 to maximize like the speed at which you like increase that social link. And so you're sitting there like, do I just like load and like try a different answer? Like, do I just try to pull up a guide? Like, and back in Persona 3, like, unless you had a strategy guide, like, you didn't have time to do all that stuff.
Yeah, I think I played through it once. And unless you, like, if you're just going in clean, because there was always a New Game Plus where you got to go in with your stats. Yeah. And then it was pretty easy, since you didn't have to focus on that, you could hit everything. If you didn't, though, I think you had to perfectly do it in a specific way. That was the only way to get every social link to the max by the end of the game. Yeah. And if you did one thing wrong or like off the guide, you wouldn't. And so, long story short, you didn't like in any playthrough you were never able to complete everything.
Never. Yeah, it's tricky. They were pretty brutal back then.
And the worst part too is those games are like 90 hours. Yeah. So it's not just like, I'll do these ones and I'll go replay it again and do these ones, unless you've got like 200 plus hours to spare.
It's given me Final Fantasy X-2 flashbacks and PTSD, where you're trying to do a perfect run and you miss one, you skip one dialogue, and it's like you're just completely screwed and want to quit the game. They definitely let up a little bit on the later games, I would say, compared to 3, but it was not easy to get a perfect playthrough for that. And you needed it more in 3 because that game was so freaking hard. Yep. The last boss of 3 was 12 different stages or something like that.
It was punishing.
You have to fight this creature as it switches arcana. Maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was all of them, like all 20 something or whatever. Which one phase can instant kill your entire party depending on which you had. Like, it was so brutal.
And that was a game too. Like, if your main character dies, it's game over. Even if other people are alive. Unlike Final Fantasy, where it's like Cloud could go down and then you could use another party member to revive him. Yeah. If you could have all the rest of your characters at full health, but if your main character gets zapped or gets one-hitted, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, man, it was brutal. The one thing I remember thinking was so odd was the main character and Aegis's relationship. I always remember thinking it was so strange because she's so obsessed with this guy, and I can't recall why. I know they ended up releasing FES, which
so they went into it in a couple different. There was FES, which was the extended version. They released Portable, which was like it was Persona 3, but you could also do a female version of the main character. And then they also touched on it a little bit in these fighting games they released afterwards. Right.
Which those I never really got into. But I do remember they kind of, and that actually bridged the game a little bit, right? To 4? The cast? Didn't they?
Well, I don't know that they ever... No, they did. Yeah, they did touch base on that.
Because I remember Aegis was fighting with some of the characters from, I think it was Persona 4, right?
No, I think I think because they had a Persona 3 fighting game. Or wait.
Yeah, because
right,
Yukari shows up as a Power Ranger.
They do, yep.
That's what I recall the most. I thought that was back in the day when I saw her in that Power Ranger outfit. I had my mama looking at me different.
Oh, yep. That was quite the glow up.
I know you were over there trying to catch them all. I was trying to morph. You know what I mean? It was morphing time for me.
I was just trying to get to Mitsuru's limousine or whatever she was always driving around in.
Yeah, Persona's a very perverted game, man. We got it. Yep. You can't pass that up. All right. This game is made for old perverts, okay, of all sorts, because it's a very weird setup, right? The game is rated M. There's a lot of dark themes. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of plunging, and you play as a high schooler, and you usually get into these relationships with other high schoolers or adults. It could be whoever. Yet you're supposed to be an adult when you play the game.
The games they're rated M.
They're rated M. So what? 17
supposed to be an
plus?
adult when you play them.
18 plus.
But then you're playing as like a high school kid, and you're playing as like a first year or like a second year or something high school kid.
It's not senior year.
So I don't know. You're at like 15.
Yeah.
And then already weird. But at least in the first two, you're like, the relationships in 3 and 4 with your peers, like other high school students or like other people your age. And then 5 was just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you're getting into these like torrid affairs with adults, even though you're like a high schooler.
Yeah. So, if you're going to hop in this game, if you haven't, just be prepared. If you have played this game, you're a pervert. Just own up
Welcome
to
the
it.
fold.
I'm calling it out. You're getting powers plunged. A title of being a perv, okay? You shouldn't be playing these games unless you're of age. Oh wait, no, you should be playing if you're a high.
No matter what, you're screwed.
Fun games though. I mean, the formula can't be beat. So look, we've been on 3 for a minute here now, and I don't want to lose time on 4 and 5, so I think we got to just move forward. I loved 3. 3 will always have a sweet spot in my heart. You know what I mean? It really was the introduction to this franchise to me. The characters were great at the time. A little one note, but and the story, man, the story got really interesting. There's like a rival sect that have their own goal, and they have personas as well. And we don't want to spoil it for anybody who's
some interesting plot twists. There's some cool events that unfold.
Absolutely. If you are a fan of the newest Persona, which I'm assuming most of our listeners will be, and you have not played 3, I suggest you go back. It's timeless. It will be a fun playthrough. You're gonna have to slog, though. You're gonna have to slog. It's not quite as fast paced as 5, but definitely one of the best Shimigami Tensei games ever made.
So at this point, both of us, I think, we're both sold.
Yeah.
And then Persona 4 came out.
Oh man.
And 4, I mean, it took the format and it kicked it up a gear.
Yes.
It took the dungeon format, it made it a lot more interesting. Took the social links, expanded on, I think, made even more of them.
Yes.
There were like 5 extras or something. It really expanded on that style.
Oh yeah.
But it took you kind of out of the city to a small town in the more rural Japanese countryside.
Yes.
And again, like you said, that feeling of alienation. The main character, their parents are away on some business trip or something.
They're fucking
for whatever
off
reason, he gets shipped off to his uncle, who's this like kind of like grizzled like detective in this small town, and he's a single dad with a young kid. And you arrive at this town, and you realize, I gotta stay with it. Like, I'm stuck with this young daughter of his.
Right. Oh,
well, he's off being a detective in this small town. You kind of settle in to to go to school, to meet your this version's Junpei.
Yes.
And then things start to get interesting.
Things start getting real interesting, right? You play as, I think, you, and I don't mean you, I mean you.
You, yeah.
You play as you.
Not like you,
but not like the letter U, you.
Right.
You.
But not Y-O-U, Y-U, you.
Yes, you. So you play as you, and Man, now, like I said, when I got into Persona 4, I was like, damn, I was like, finally, we're plunging into something I like. He looked sick. He had the glasses. He had the white,
he had that posture with like the one hand cool in the pocket, kind of chilling.
His weapon was a katana. Like, this dude wasn't getting punked by nobody. Like, I feel like he had some backstory too. Like, he got in trouble back at home. Because I think his uncle says something to him like, you better not cause trouble here too, or something. I could be thinking of Persona 5 mostly, but I thought he was a kind of a ruffian too, I thought. But anyway, he just was on a whole nother level in terms of how he looked and presented himself, and in terms of animations. His persona Izanagi compared to Orphis was like, I don't even know. He looked like the fusion of the two main Digimon from the OG Digimon series when they became like, if you look up Omnimon, like he looked like a version of him, just some cool like massive dude with this double-sided saber, like just
kind of like dark cloak looking thing.
Dark cloak, just looked epic. Izanagi, he was a thunder like god dude or whatever, thunder ailment, and so I was ready. I was pumped, and the way that he unlocks his persona. Again, night and day from 3. And 3, like I said, kids are shooting themselves in the head. It's just, when you
kind of walk into something that's already established.
Yeah,
Like you basically become part of this group that's already doing this thing, and you're sort of, along for the ride at first.
Yeah, and it's also just a little weird. Like, you show up, you get this, I forget exactly what happens in 3, but the gun slides, so you pop yourself and boom. But in this one, it's so anime, This crap's happening. All this monster is attacking and and the main character steps up to the occasion, and when he sees
just like the heartbeat, they're like heed my call.
Yeah, heed my call, and he smirks and just power shooting out of him. He's Izanagi, they get Johnny Umbosch to do the voice. It was on a whole nother freaking level, man. It really was.
And it was such a cool, like, they realized they might have gone a little too far with the whole shooting yourself in the head.
Yeah.
So that the style of this one was masks. And so the main character, like, kind of grows this sick-looking mask and then just, like, rips it. Or wait, no, it wasn't masks. It was cards.
It was cards.
It was cards. And so you just, like, this card appears and you just, like, grab it.
Snatch it.
Yep.
And
call out.
It was so freaking cool, man. And so, like, we didn't dive too deep into it, but Persona 3, again, it's the same thing. You're balancing your real life with your superhero life. And in that one, it's like there's this tower that erects itself at the midnight hour, they call it, which is like 12 at every night or whatever. You go into the tower, and time basically stops until you leave, and then the midnight hour is over by like 12:01 or whatever it is. In this game, you're dragged into different worlds via a TV. So it starts up, there's been a murder in this rural area, and it's brutal. It's still grisly. It's not as dark
brutal murder
overall as like 3, but like there's a body like tangled up in some like
these like phone wires on top of like a pole, and it's rough.
It's rough. It's like it's a grisly murder, so it's already like, oh shit, like what am I stepping into?
And of course, your uncle's a detective, so now he's just like, he's gone all the time. He's got to solve the case, so that kind of leaves you free to speculate and to get into trouble.
To get in a lot of trouble. And so you start meeting all your cast. You kind of bumble your way into a television set where you have to face off with these monsters, and you start realizing, wait a minute, we're not the only ones going into these TVs activating our personas. There's someone else pushing people into these realms, and if you're stuck in this realm for too long, you die. And that's when your body will miraculously appear fucked up somewhere in the real world. And so, unlike Persona 3, where you're just kind of wandering around and following these story beats and trying to figure out what's going on, in terms of what are these cards, what are these personas, and this one, it's more like, all right, we know what our personas are. Who is this murderer? Like, who?
Yep.
It's more about
they really
finding
bring
a
it
person.
Kind of down to the main cast.
Yeah.
It's like less about, like, in the third one, you're really kind of part of this greater thing, and you're sort of following them, but because of your unique ability, you kind of become the leader as you explore this. And 4, though, it kind of slows down. Like, there's no one guiding you.
It's very slow, yeah.
It's really just like at first you, and then you and your close friends who kind of like stumble upon this like weird world, and the TV's with you,
right?
And you realize inadvertently that you can save these people, but at the same time, you then know that something's going on. Like, why is this happening?
And you do
so you become a little bit of a, Scooby-Doo crew. You're gotta solve the mystery.
But you do have a leader in the form of Teddy.
God.
One of your first party members is this teddy bear.
Like, it looks like a person in a mascot suit.
Yeah.
Like not even like a cartoon, like completely blown out of proportion, like bear you would see at a carnival. Who always speaks in this like squeaky like voice, and is this very weird character that you meet like in the TV world.
Yeah,
and they kind of become like the mascot / guide of the party.
Interesting arc because as goofy as Teddy is, that character had two interesting points. Which one was, when they came to the real world, they eventually end up getting a human form. So they're not this like mascot teddy bear anymore. And so they start to question like what it means to be human, like the value of life, da-da-da-da. And then on top of that, like there's some other stuff going on with Teddy and like why like Teddy even exists and what like Teddy's purpose is that you dive into later on. That's, pretty significant. So
yeah, Persona's always leaned into the like weird metaphysical like exploration of like consciousness and purpose.
Yes.
In very strange Japanese ways.
Yeah. In Japanese ways. Yeah, we ain't talking about the any type of Odyssey here or anything like that. We're just talking about talking teddy bears. But yeah, so you get that cast going with a few cool characters. You got Naoto. This like detective, this like genius young detective, and they basically are like one of the later game party members, one of the more interesting party members that like changes the whole dynamic of the crew because now you have like a professional, like better than your uncle, like somebody who can track down anybody.
I mean, you're on a murder case, and then you get like a prodigy detective.
Yes, so already. This character, I would say, is more grandiose than any of the other characters in 3. Rise, who's like a pop star icon. So again, just 100 times more grand than any of the cast of 3. Like an actual celebrity on your team to the point where, like, I think she's like undercover half the time she's with you because like she doesn't want her fans to come and like rush her. Yukiko, who's of course like the Yukari from like the last one. Very academic, intelligent, like headstrong party member. Yusuke, who we talked about, I think already, who's kind of your next goofy, bro. Chie, who's a little bit more like Akihiko, kind of a bruiser, athletic, Again, they're all coming from different backgrounds, so it's a whole different flavor than 3, but the characters are similar in that way. And then Golden ended up adding a few more too, or I think one more, Marie. Who's kind of your hottie to Scotty style,
Yeah, very like interesting, offbeat.
Honestly, I don't even recall like too much as to like what her character was because I only played Golden once, but very interesting looking character and very important character in terms of when you play through Golden, you end up figuring out some pretty amazing things about her that I cannot say because I don't want to spoil that game.
Yep.
But interesting, powerful cast in this one. Probably my favorite cast, I would say, of these 3.
I have to agree.
Yeah, just great. Like they took what 3 started and, like I said, just made everything so much bigger, so much more fleshed out, so much more fun. And I feel like I may have missed a character too.
Oh actually. Yeah, you're forgetting Kanji.
Kanji, yes.
The biker gang tough guy thug. Who turns out to not be what he seems.
He certainly doesn't. And he beats the hell out of people with his go-to weapon is a folding chair, I want to say.
Yep.
Yeah, so very interesting choice of weapon. Funny character and super energetic. Again, just grandiose. Like this guy is just always shouting and getting into trouble on a scale that like no one from 3 would ever get into. So,
yeah, just a real colorful characters. All had a whole lot of depth, and like their stories were really interesting. They were all fun and unique. But it was such a great like kind of like fleshed out version. Like the because you weren't in 3, you were kind of going into the same dungeon over and over again. It was almost like, I mean, it was just, this kind of like, all right, another set of levels.
Another level.
In this one, each dungeon had like its own theme and was like very critical to the story, like progression of the time.
Yeah.
And so it was just cool because with every one, you got like, it was a different style, different layout, like different music, some of which was better than the other. But, but it was a really cool, like, it felt more personal. It was like you're in charge of this, like, this growing band of high schoolers trying to solve this mystery. And there's an interesting, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's some very interesting twists later on in the game that can actually impact what happens.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And we have to say this without spoiling, but it had the best villain of the entire franchise.
Without a doubt.
Best villain of the entire franchise. And that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to spoil anything else, but things are not always what they seem. And if you have not played Persona 4, this is, I believe, Persona 4 Golden is the best Persona in the series. It gets my power stamp of approval. And I would say go back and play it.
My favorite story, Golden, is on Steam. It's on sale frequently.
It's on stale. So fresh it
up. It's old. It's not stale. Hold on. Let me check myself. Let me reset.
So we got to roll it to Persona 5. Yep. Right, we only got so much time in the world.
The one thing we gotta say, because you mentioned it, Golden. Yeah. This is where, so with 3, I mean, they released the extended version of 3, which was like there was an extra dungeon.
Yeah.
But it was pretty much the same game.
Yeah.
And they did Portable, which was the same game, but now you can like play as the female version. 4, they released Golden, which was basically this whole extended. I mean, there was like a new character. They basically added like 2 whole months to the game of like story and content.
They fleshed out the main game.
Yeah. They added to it, and then they did these spin-offs of the fighting games, where it was that Persona 4 cast running into some of the Persona 3 cast. There was a whole story to it. I mean, it was like it literally like the campaign game had its own huge story.
Yeah,
a lot of reading dialogue, but
yeah.
But it was a fun fighting game too.
It was. I think it was the guys who did Guilty Gear, the newer Guilty Gears, right?
And it was crisp.
Fighter Z. Oh, it was so crisp.
Such a great game.
We don't have all the time in the world to spend on it, but one thing I loved about it was that similar to a game like Fighter Z, you had a button that did your attacks, and then you had two buttons to do like punch kick. Then you had 2 buttons that did persona abilities. So it was like playing 2 fighting games at the same time. It was so cool. You had to balance your persona meters, all that cool stuff.
Juggling like your character, your persona's abilities. Oh, amazing.
And it had a good story. It really did. So, but not something you have to play if you don't want to play it and you're worried about that you're gonna miss some story. You won't.
Yeah, you're not. It's fun extra stuff. Definitely out there, but it's not gonna mess with the main storyline.
Which brings us to the newest Persona, Persona 5, and Persona 5 Royal, right? And we might as well just dive into Royal, since Royal encompasses everything.
Yeah, it's Persona 5 Plus. So
yeah.
It is the game, an extra game.
Absolutely. Again, now we've got a main character, and this character is in between 3 and 4 to me at first, right? When I first saw this character, I was like, oh, at first I thought, is that the guy from 3 but older? No, it wasn't. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, he looks cool, but you was so cool. Like you had a katana. Then you see this guy get into his outfit, right?
Yep.
His Phantom Thief outfit, and he propels himself to the coolest looking Persona character that has ever existed, that may ever exist. And we're talking about Joker. Right, so this guy,
the character's so cool, he made it into Smash Bros.
He made it into Smash Bros. You've definitely seen Joker before, even if you've never played a Persona game. You've seen something of Joker. He's everywhere. He's on stickers. He's on whatever. He's everywhere. Websites, you name it. So this guy, similar to you from Persona 4, rolls into town. He had a little altercation in his past with a senator, I want to say. And he was unjustly charged and was basically forced to do community service, I want to say. Right?
I think he actually went to juvie. Like he basically got arrested, has like a mark on his record.
Right.
Which I mean, even we don't know the full extent of like the weight of this in Japan. But long story short, like infractions like that, I guess, and like having a criminal record in Japan is like extremely serious. I mean, it's bad everywhere, but like having done something like that to the point where you go to jail is like a very big like social stain against you.
Yeah, so he comes in as a criminal. His classmates are saying he might be a killer. He's violent. He's crazy. The person that he's living with is the owner of a coffee shop, and not related to him at all. And he's basically taking him in as a charity case. And he's like, "Don't you get in any?"
He gets like expelled from school.
Yeah.
This other school takes him in, but he's forced to like stay nearby. Yeah.
And so this guy's like, "Don't get any trouble. I don't trust you. I'm keeping my eye on you. Don't know?"
Oh yeah.
And so
right
like
out
this
of the gate,
very different vibe. Like not welcoming at all.
It's like we're taking that alienation to the next level.
Next level, like man, everybody. So let's talk the cast a little bit. So you got a few awesome characters in this one, for sure. You got Anne, who is the Yukari of this game, and just very similar.
Yep.
She's really more of a mix between Yukari and Chiyo from 4. Very athletic, headstrong.
Definitely got quite... and it's cool. Like every Persona game has a theme, and I think I'd say like you said, 3 is kind of like death in life. 4 is I think it's like kind of facing like the ugly truth and like kind of like confronting like yourself.
Confront yourself,
and then like 5 is like emancipation. It's like free yourself from the binds that like are holding you down,
the shackles of society.
Yep. And that's very, I mean, like, in the main character, they're like unjustly accused. They're already like put down. And then, like similarly, like Anne, she's, another character who's like kind of almost like auxiliary. Like she's feeling sort of like trapped by things that are happening to her friends and the people around her, and like is not okay with it. Just can't like, sit there and take it.
And one thing I liked about this game was, like in 3, the theme is death, but most of the characters just have to accept what is. So the main character lost his parents. Like all of the other characters have some sort of, in some way, have to deal with death and accept or whatever. And this one, the shackles are there. It's not like, just accept. Character. It's like they're all being bogged down by something.
Every single character is like really, like really has this weight upon them. Like Anne's got this burden. Ryuji, who's like your, that classic goofy bro, kind of like idiot. Say like similarly, and his is like kind of subtle. Like you meet him and he comes in the story. It's not until later you really figure out how screwed over he's gotten.
Yeah.
I mean,
mentally and physically. Yeah. So and this one also, I will say, had one of the darkest villains of the series. And early on too, the coach.
Like pretty much the first real villain you confront in this game
is a rapist.
Yep.
Like and I've never I don't think I've seen that theme touched in any game, like much less a Persona game. And so they did not shy away from getting gritty and making, and even with him they try to have some slight redemption for that villain. And so it was a fascinating game. I mean, this one is way... this is a perfect in-between of 4 and 5, or 3. If you want Darkness 3, you want Anime 4, and then this is like, give it all to me, right?
And it's such an interesting game, because, I think 4 is still my favorite. Mm-hmm. But the thing is just like when you play 5 and then you go back, it's difficult. Because 5, I mean, it really kicked... both sides of the game to overdrive.
Yeah.
Every dungeon, it made more dynamic. It added these sort of 3D elements to it. You were actually like kind of climbing around and like hiding. Like these different things you had to solve. And then in the social side, I mean, even in the base game, there was just so much to do. I mean, there were tons of social links. There were so many different options on like how to spend your time, what to do. And then in Royal, they like dang near doubled it. I mean, all of a sudden it was just like, now you could go to this whole other area and like hang out at a jazz bar, like play pool. Or
there was so much, and Royal also, similar to 4, added more to the ending, like a whole nother piece, a whole nother chapter.
Yep.
And I know I said my favorite cast is 4, which is true, But my favorite character from the entire franchise, like my overall favorite character that's not the protagonist, is in this game. And that's Goro Akechi. That character to me was like, I mean, I forget, the voice actor is a voice that we all know and love. I don't care what games you've played, that you know that voice, and I'm blanking on the name right now. But that character, I full spoiler coming because I just gotta say it. So just skip a few minutes, give it 3 minutes. It's gonna take me 2 seconds to say this, but Goro ends up being one of the villains, right? This is a character who's, again, young, genius detective. He joins your party at one point, gets a persona, and then you end up figuring out, like, this dude is basically like Tommy from Power Rangers. He's like the Green Ranger, like, betrays you, fights you. But the best thing about it is, like, his actual persona is still in his human form. Like, he's always wearing his persona. Like, whereas these other characters are like, they summon their persona and there's this awesome magical thing. Like, Goro is wearing his persona when you meet him.
It.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so when you see him, like, actually break that sucker as a human, he's a complete psychopath. Like, but he's kind of like he's a psychopath, like early
perfect,
Vegeta.
Like Two-Face vibe.
Yeah, like he still has goals. He's very cunning and smart, intelligent, strong. Totally driven, but he's just he's
the
cutthroat.
ends will justify the means.
Yeah, and his lines and everything that they gave him brought me to my childhood of, like, Toonami, when the villains used to be villains, but they were so cool and you rooted for them. Like, that's what Goro is. All the way to the end, his ending is so badass. Because by the end, you don't know if he's dead or alive. But nevertheless, like, he ends up being brought back in this way where it's kind of him, but not him. And he's so badass that he tells the main character, even though you have this choice, and one choice will lead him basically to permanent death, and the other choice leads to a life for him. He says, because it ain't him completely, I don't give then let's do the right choice, even if it costs me my life, because I don't care. Like, he's that hardcore. He's like Goro Akechi was just a freaking beast. If you have not played Persona 5, it's worth playing just to get to that guy and get that guy in your party in Royal.
Yep. And like you said, I mean, his voice actor is Robbie Daymond in the English version.
Yes.
And part of the reason I love the Persona 5 cast especially is because not only him, but another character in your party, Yusuke, is voiced by Matt Mercer.
Yeah.
And both of them happen to be in a D&D show that I personally love.
Yes.
So it's a nice little extra treat for me.
And it's funny because he did, not Mercer, but Robbie did Prompto, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why I loved it again, because Prompto's such a carefree, like, hey guys, like Final Fantasy 15, he's, hey, what are we gonna do? And so when I heard his voice, I'm basically caught off guard, because he's always like that. And even in this, he's a little more calculated. He's like, gee, I wonder what's going on here. But then when you actually hear him speak as himself, and he's like, ravage them, like, it's so badass, it's so cool. It was refreshing, man. So
yeah. I mean, this really was, again, this, like, next level culmination of so many. It has, first of all, just the kind of the underlying vibe behind Joker. This Phantom Thief, very much inspired by some, like, very famous, Japanese anime about, these, like, master thieves, these sort of
Lupin
gentleman thieves who would become these very debonair, like, suave thief icons.
Yes.
So it had that vibe to it. But it also, to me, has such an interesting story in its development, because from my understanding, just from what I've heard, I don't even have a source to cite at this point. It's just what I've read over the years, is that initially the goal for this game was to basically have this group, this kind of like Phantom Thief group, and it was really focused around this main character who was traveling, I think, around the world, like traveling all these different places. And that's how you'd kind of pick up the different characters. In each place, you'd have, like, an adventure. It'd be this sort of, like, very Phantom Thief-like style, like, heist kind of vibe to it. But it was, like, even hearing that is a very big departure from sort of that original Persona style. And then this massive earthquake hit Japan. And it really, I mean, it was a huge catastrophe. It was a huge disaster, big tragedy. And it also really kind of redirected the director's sentimentality. And he really realized that he wanted to tell a story more personal to Japan, and he really wanted to kind of bring the story back home, and it completely shifted the direction into the Persona 5 game that we got. And so it's a really interesting kind of story about how all these different real-life impacts led to the final product that we got. But there's a little, I think, homage to that original idea in the form of Persona 5 Strikers, which was a spin-off where you and your core crew basically go on summer vacation to these different areas and, solve an additional story.
That's awesome. I got to get to Strikers, man. I got to. Man, so, we don't have a lot of time left, of course, because Persona is just so rich.
Yep.
But I do just want to touch on one other party member from Persona 5. One of my personal favorites, Morgana, a talking cat.
We went from a talking teddy bear to a talking cat.
And I'm going to keep this short by just saying I'm kidding. Morgana's not one of my favorite characters, but Morgana was definitely one of the best characters of that game in terms of what they brought to the story.
Yep.
Nevertheless, we're running a little short, so I think we got to just kind of wrap it up. Persona 5, we may have to just return to it by itself. The game is so rich. Persona 5 Royal is so dense. 90 to 100 hours if you're playing slow. I mean, if you're playing fast, you're still at 60 to 70 easily. So we got plenty to talk about. Much more Persona to come.
Oh yeah.
A Persona event to come up. So, but for now, reset.
Yep.
We've got Persona 3, 4, 5. What are you giving it?
Man, you know how much I love this series. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 points to my charm level stat. Because I need that romance ending, man. What about you, Power? Persona 3, 4, 5. What are you giving it?
I'm going to have to give it 5 out of 5 Phantom Thieves. Because the party just wouldn't be complete otherwise.
There you have it, a perfect score. 5 out of 5 and 5 out of 5. It's a royal ending.
It's a royal ending. It's golden.
It's FES? No, doesn't work. All right, thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. Write us about your favorite Persona moment if you've played it, or if you plan to play it and we haven't spoiled too much, let us know at powerandresetpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, power up, and if you don't like it, reset.
Plunge in, guys.